The dry wind carried dust across the endless prairie as a lone rider urged his tired horse toward the distant mountains, never imagining that before the sun reached its highest point, his fate would rest in the hands of three towering Apache sisters feared by every outlaw, trader, and soldier for miles. Travelers whispered stories about them as if they were spirits born from the desert itself. Some claimed they could outrun wild horses. Others swore they could track a single footprint across solid rock. Yet none of those stories came close to the truth. What happened that bright afternoon would change one lonely cowboy forever and prove that the greatest miracles in the wild West were not born from gunfights, but from unexpected acts of courage and compassion. Before we continue this unforgettable Wild West journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves emotional frontier stories, and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. If you believe that even in the harshest days of the Old West, second chances could change a person's destiny forever. The year was 1883, and 29-year-old Silas Mercer had not known peace for a very long time. His weathered hat shaded tired eyes that had witnessed too much loss for a man still considered young. Months earlier, a ruthless cattle syndicate had burned the small ranch he inherited from his parents after Silas refused to sell the family land. The flames had consumed everything except the saddle beneath him, an old rifle, and a stubborn bay horse named Copper. Since then, every sunrise had begun with uncertainty, and every sunset ended with another lonely camp beneath open skies. Hunger had become familiar, hope had become distant, and the future seemed as empty as the desert stretching before him. The morning had begun with clear, blue skies and bright daylight pouring over the valleys. Birds circled lazily above tall cliffs, while fresh mountain streams reflected the cloudless sky. Even in hardship, the frontier possessed a breathtaking beauty that reminded every traveler how small they truly were. Silas followed an old wagon trail leading toward the trading settlement of Red Mesa, hoping to find temporary work repairing fences or breaking horses. His pockets held only a few worn coins, barely enough to buy bread, but he refused to surrender to despair. Every mile forward felt like a quiet promise to his late parents that he would never stop trying. Far ahead, strange marks in the dust caught his attention. They were much larger than ordinary footprints and surrounded by the tracks of three powerful horses. Local rumors instantly returned to his mind. Ranchers often spoke of three Apache sisters whose height, strength, and remarkable skill had become legendary across the territory. Some feared them because fear spread faster than truth in the Old West. Others respected them because travelers who treated the Apache people with kindness often.
Yet something deep inside told him that the stories carried only half the truth. By midday, the sunlight stood high above the canyon walls, filling every corner of the valley with brilliant daylight. Copper suddenly slowed, ears pointed forward. The horse sensed movement long before Silas could see it. Then three riders appeared atop a ridge overlooking the narrow trail. They were tall young Apache women whose calm confidence immediately commanded respect. Their names were Ayana, Nijoni, and Tala. Each carried herself with quiet dignity rather than intimidation. Their long dark hair moved gently in the wind, and their clothing blended naturally with the colors of the surrounding landscape. Instead of anger, curiosity filled their expressions as they observed the exhausted cowboy below. Silas felt every warning he had ever heard echo inside his thoughts. Yet something seemed different from the frightening tales shared around campfires. These women showed no sign of hostility. They simply watched carefully, reading every movement with remarkable patience. Copper lowered his head peacefully instead of showing fear. Animals often recognized kindness before people did. Only moments later, the silence shattered. Desperate cries drifted across the canyon as a frightened supply wagon raced downhill without control. One frightened mule had broken free while the remaining team struggled wildly against twisted harnesses. A frightened family clung desperately inside as heavy wooden wheels bounced violently over rocks. The wagon sped directly toward a steep ravine where certain disaster waited. Without hesitation, the three Apache sisters urged their horses forward. Silas reacted just as quickly, forgetting exhaustion and hunger. Dust exploded beneath, pounding hooves as all four riders charged toward the runaway wagon. The desperate race unfolded beneath the bright afternoon sun while frightened birds scattered into the sky. Silas reached the wagon first and grabbed a loose rein, but the terrified animals dragged both him and Copper dangerously close to the cliff's edge. The strain nearly pulled him from the saddle. Before disaster struck, Ayana rode alongside with astonishing control, securing another rein while Tala guided her horse directly across the runaway team's path. At the same instant, Nijoni leaped from her saddle onto the moving wagon, cutting tangled harness straps with incredible precision. Together, their perfectly timed actions slowed the panicked animals just enough for the wagon to stop only a few feet from the edge of the ravine. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The only sound came from frightened mules, breathing heavily beneath the warm afternoon sky. The rescued family climbed down safely, overwhelmed with relief. Their young children hugged one another while tears streamed down their mother's face. Gratitude
Silas
filled
watched
the valley
the three
more.
sisters with growing admiration. Every frightening rumor he had believed dissolved before his own eyes. They had risked everything to save complete strangers, without asking for reward or recognition. In that single moment, he realized that fear often grows from misunderstanding, while respect grows from witnessing true character. The grateful family offered food to everyone who had helped. Fresh bread, dried fruit, and cool water were shared equally beneath the shade of tall cottonwood trees. It was the first satisfying meal Silas had enjoyed in several days. The sisters accepted only enough to continue their journey, showing quiet humility that impressed him even more than their remarkable courage. As the afternoon continued, dark memories surfaced within Silas. He confessed that he no longer possessed a home and that every opportunity seemed to disappear before he could reach it. Although no formal conversation followed, the sisters understood his pain simply by looking into his weary eyes. Hardship spoke a language recognized by everyone who had survived the unforgiving frontier. Instead of riding away, Ayanna motioned toward a peaceful valley hidden beyond the canyon. There stood a small Apache farming settlement surrounded by healthy fields, grazing horses and carefully tended orchards. Children laughed beneath the bright sky while elders repaired tools and prepared baskets. The place felt alive with cooperation rather than fear. Silas had expected suspicion, yet he found welcome instead. For the next several days, he worked from sunrise until late afternoon, repairing fences damaged by storms, mending wagon wheels, and helping gather fresh water from nearby streams. Every task reminded him of the ranch he had lost. Little by little, the heavy burden inside his heart began to lift. The sisters never treated him as a stranger. They judged him only by his willingness to work honestly and help others. One afternoon, trouble returned when several ruthless horse thieves attempted to steal valuable animals from the settlement during broad daylight. Their plan depended upon surprise, believing the peaceful community would scatter in panic. They had underestimated both the determination of the Apache families and the quiet resilience growing once again inside Silas Mercer. Standing beside Ayanna, Nijoni, and Tala, Silas defended the frightened horses without hatred or revenge. Working together with remarkable coordination, they protected the animals until the thieves realized they had failed completely. Defeated and unwilling to continue, the criminals abandoned their attempt and disappeared into the distant hills. That evening, as the setting sun painted soft colors across the valley, Silas understood something he had nearly forgotten. A home was never defined only by buildings or fences. Sometimes home was found in the advancing willing flames. To stand beside Tala you coordinated volunteers to dig fire breaks and soak buildings with water from the nearby creek. Silas worked beside them until his hands were blistered and his clothes were covered with dust and ash. The battle lasted. As evening approached, beneath the harsh wind daylight, finally shifted. No one gave up. The fire turned away from the valley, leaving both communities damaged but standing. Exhausted families embraced one another with tears of relief. Homes could be repaired, fences rebuilt, and fields replanted. The greatest victory was that every life had been saved because strangers had chosen to stand together. News of their bravery spread throughout the territory. Ranchers, merchants, and travelers who had once distrusted one another began helping rebuild both settlements. Wagons arrived carrying lumber, seeds, tools, and livestock. The kindness shown by 3 Apache sisters and 1 lonely cowboy inspired people far beyond their valley. Years later, children growing up in the region no longer remembered the old rumors. Instead, they learned the true story of 4 ordinary people who proved that courage was stronger than fear and compassion was more powerful than hatred. Silas often smiled whenever visitors asked whether the legendary sisters were as fearless as the stories claimed. He would simply look toward the mountains, where the 3 women still rode together beneath the open sky, and quietly nod with gratitude. If this continuation touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, so more inspiring frontier tales can reach people everywhere. Special request: before you leave, write "Kindness always wins" in the comments if you believe compassion can change history one person at a time. The frontier eventually changed, railroads arrived, and new towns replaced lonely trails, but the legend of Silas Mercer, Ayana, Nijoni, and Tala never faded. Long after their footprints disappeared from the dusty paths of the Old West, their greatest lesson remained. Even in the harshest land, the strongest hearts are the ones willing to lift others when they have fallen.